Hello, and thank you all for tuning into another episode of Outside the Box. It's me, your host, Sage the Coach. For those of you who don't know me, I am a Christian author and certified life and relationship coach. My show usually airs on Saturdays at 12 p.m., and my show Outside the Box aims to help people see that God is bigger than our boxes, because we always want to put not only God in the box, but other people in the box, our experiences in the box, life in the box. And life is much bigger than that, and God is much bigger than that, and people are much bigger than that. And so I think we all could use a little help in different areas of our lives to understand how we can see God outside of our boxes. And the topic that I want to do that about today is with miscarriages and loss, because I think a lot of the times, and if you have watched my show, you will see that I try to talk a little bit more about hardships and how to get through hardships, because that's usually where we get stuck, and that's usually where we struggle. And so if we can understand how to stay focused on God, or how to see God, or even understand how the process of suffering and loss and struggling works, because a lot of the times we think it's supposed to happen a certain way, and it doesn't always have to happen. It never happens the way that we want it to happen, actually. And that's the whole idea of outside the box. So if you have a better understanding of how it should look if you're going through it, then it helps you navigate a little bit better. And so one of the more heavier topics that this can apply to is when you have experienced some loss and grief. And so I did a show some few months ago with the lady Andrea Braxton, and she lost her daughter to a hit and run driver. And so we talked a little bit about seeing God through that loss. And so with this story that I have for today, we're going to talk to a guest. She's a life coach and also an author, and she wrote a book about her experiences. She actually suffered several miscarriages, not one miscarriage, not two miscarriages. And so this type of loss is like compounded, and it can be very, very difficult, even from the little bit of experience that I have in this area and in some other areas of loss, to deal with even one. So how much more if it's kind of coming and happening back to back, or even more than one time. And so we want to talk about that a little bit today, and I hope you guys get something out of it. And I think that's it. Really quickly, before I bring out my guests, I want to remind you all that, of course, it's December, Christmas is coming, and I have a giveaway that I am trying to do, or going to do, for my first time being on the air for Christmas, because my show actually it airs on Christmas Day, that Saturday. And so you guys, please sign up for the giveaway. I'm giving away some books. I'm giving away some free coaching sessions. I'm also giving away some gift cards. So if you sign up for the giveaway, I will notify you by email if you can't catch the show on Christmas Day, to tell you if you've won. And I'm really looking forward to blessing some people. So you guys make sure you sign up for the giveaway. And so now back to the show topic. I'm going to bring out my guest. Her name is Karen Smith. And here she is. Hello, Karen. How you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing great.
That's great. I know this is a little bit of a heavy topic, and sometimes people might be thrown off because sometimes I'm smiling when we're talking about heavy stuff. And so I don't want to not, for that to come off the wrong way, because I do. It's like when you're going through something, it's one thing, but when you know that God kind of help you through it. So it's like, even when you're talking about it, in my mind, I'm like, God got her through this, God helped her. And so I know this is a little bit of a heavier topic today, but inside I'm already happy for you, because I know that even though the story starts sad, we have a very, very great and blessed ending of what God can really do in the midst of some very, very difficult things. And so, but thank you for, sharing your story, sharing your book. And I'm really looking forward to hear what you have to say. But before we get into that, can you please just let everybody know who you are, what you do, and anything else you want us to know before we get into talking about your book?
Well, my name is Karen Smith, and I live in Wheaton, Illinois, and I have three children here on Earth, and I have three children in heaven, and that's the heavenly children I think are going to be our focus tonight. But my two girls are in college, and I'm still homeschooling my son, who's in high school. And I am a seminary graduate. I went to Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary and got my MDiv there. And I also was on staff with Campus Crusade for 5 years. That's where my husband and I met at a name tag table. And then I'm currently a life coach. I actually am working with business clients right now with writing and business coaching, but I also help with homeschool and really just treasuring life and making the moments the best they can be.
Yeah, wow, that's great. And so, I know you people, nobody knows watching this, but Karen is from an area that I used to live in Wheaton, Illinois. And so it was really exciting to kind of connect with somebody from Illinois. I haven't been there in a really long time, but it's always good to come across people that, you've crossed paths with. We probably drove down the same streets many times. And so we're from the same area. And then it would seem like there was something else I wanted to say, but I forgot. So I would just move on. Oh, that's what I wanted to say. And I'm really fascinated by your homeschooling experience. I've been not homeschooling, but virtual learning for like 2 years now. It's very, very difficult. I was doing it with 4 kids. And so you have such a long history with homeschooling. Can you talk about that just a little bit before we go into your book?
Sure. I mean, I think one thing that I've realized is now I know how to do it once I'm done. And a lot of the times was just really learning really what helped each one of my children to flourish because they're all needed something different. And I always thought, okay, now I've learned it, but they just kept me really on my toes and on my knees, asking God for wisdom. I did write a book called Homeschool Secrets. It has all of my 19-year experience and wisdom in that book. So if someone's interested, that is available on Amazon.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. I know so many women who have gotten into homeschooling and things like that over the past few years that I know that's probably going to be a gold mine to a lot of people. For me, I'm sending them back to school. So, but I do totally respect people who can do that, and especially teachers who have been doing it for years. I mean, 19 years you're doing it, is you kind of like on the same level of a teacher, but I have much more respect now for teachers than I did before, even though I did have a lot of respect for teachers even before, but now I kind of see it in a whole new light because it is definitely difficult and an underpaid job for all the work that you have to do. And as a mother on top of that with your own kids, my hat is off to you for that. So, wow. So you guys make sure any ladies watching and you're interested in homeschooling or you are homeschooling and you can use some tips, please check out her book, which I will put the website up. They can go find your book on your website, correct?
Yes, either the website or on Amazon.
Okay, so I'll put the link to her website below and also in the chat underneath the video if you guys, anybody is interested in that. And so, but we are going to switch focus to your other book. That book is called Learning to Parent in the Light in the Dark World. And this book talks a lot about your experience with miscarriage. You had several miscarriages from the conversation that we had. So can you talk a little bit about, this book, what pushed you to write this book, and then just kind of go into what the book is about?
Sure. Yeah. Matter of fact, the book I really wanted to write was how to help kids deal with technology because I just feel a big burden by that because I feel like kids are so distracted by that. And I feel like if you don't have a plan, it can really side rail everyone. But then when I went to write that book, what I really realized was I needed to tell my story first. Like, why was I concerned for kids and why did I want to help parents really make their moments the best it can be? So, and my husband and I met, I said at a name tag table. We actually, after we met, we were engaged within 6 months,
Oh, wow.
and then we were married within a year. And we
Wow.
just celebrated our 30-year anniversary. So,
Oh, wow. Congratulations. Wow.
so anyways,
Yeah.
it was very quick, but then we just kind of went through all of those things where we're very different, but we kind of went through all of those relational challenges as a newlywed couple, which was because we were committed, and we are so complementary because he has everything, a lot of skills I don't have. And but anyway, so the first years of our marriage, we kind of moved around a lot. We were just doing things, and so we really didn't have children on our mind. And I didn't even really know if I wanted to be a mom. So, but then we were at seminary, and I was getting my degree, and we were just surrounded by other couples who were just in the same stage of life as us. And so we just decided, we just prayed about it. We're like, I really do want to be a mom. So anyways, I got pregnant. I didn't even think anything about it. I just thought, we're just joining the ranks of the family. And I just had all the normal, things that happen when you get pregnant. You start craving food, you're tired, just all those things. And we had our 18-week ultrasound scheduled, and I was actually most interested to find out if we're having a boy or a girl. I didn't think about the health of my baby. So when we went to that ultrasound, the technician just basically kind of gave me photos of the baby's hands and feet. Didn't do a lot of pictures. I didn't even think anything about it. She told us we were having a boy, which was exciting. And,
oh, wow.
And then just went home. So I just thought everything would be fine. Well, the next day, my husband was in Boston working, and I got a phone call from the doctor. And the doctor told me, he's like, your baby will not live.
Wow. And
I was just like totally shocked because I did not feel anything coming. And so basically didn't know what to do. And so I just went over, and one of my friends was home, and I told her what the doctor just said. She helped me go pick up Dwight from the train. So that night we just called people together from our church, and they just said, it sounds like the baby could have a birth defect that basically they were thinking that the top vertebrae of the spine was not forming. Anencephaly, it's a form of spinal bifida. And so, but they said we have to confirm it with an ultrasound because we don't know for sure. It's just what we think is happening. So we called everybody from our church. They came over, they anointed me. And then we'd already picked out a name. I had been to a mission trip to China, and I just loved the life story of Hudson. And so that's what we just named. And we weren't going to tell anybody the name, but when we found out there could be a problem, we decided to tell everybody the name so they could start praying for him by name. So the two of our really good friends were there at that prayer meeting. They're like, you're not going to go to this ultrasound alone. We're going to go with you. So they came that next morning, and they were praying. And we were just really learning about the gifts of the Holy Spirit at this point. I didn't grow up that way. And so I just was getting introduced to how God moves in vision and prophetic words and all that. And so anyways, as we were praying, my friend had a vision of mums that were purple and yellow, these beautiful flowers. And she's like, mums are very hardy, and they can withstand really harsh weather. And so anyways, so we went down to Boston, and we got off of the elevator, and there in the lobby was huge pots of purple and yellow flowers. And it just really just assured me that God was with us, that he was going to take us through this. So we went to the ultrasound, and they did confirm in the ultrasound that Hudson had this problem. And they just said, you just need to terminate the pregnancy. There's 0% chance he'll ever live. And then you can just try again.
So the problem was, are you having trouble hearing me? Because it sounds weird to me.
It went out for a minute, but I can hear you now.
Okay. So the problem was spina bifida?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
So anyways, we just felt that God had given us this life, and we were to nurture it and carry him. And so, but it was hard. It was very hard for me because I initially just was like, will he die?
Exactly.
A lot of different emotions during the pregnancy. And I talk about that in my book, kind of going a little bit more in depth. But just to fast forward quickly. So then the doctors at first were, very reluctant to help me. They said, you're a high risk pregnancy. They were very trying to really discourage me, but then they ended up helping me.
So
So
when you say helping you, what do you mean? Like,
just giving me good prenatal care.
even though they're knowing that the pregnancy, okay, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, so then what ended up happening was we prayed every day. Our friends came over to pray for us. We just put a lot of prayer into it. And like talk about that story in the book.
Mm-hmm.
But basically what happened was my water broke 10 weeks early. And I
Oh,
was,
so you carried the baby to 30 weeks?
yeah.
Wow.
And so then we went to the hospital, and they did an ultrasound, and they just said, your water shouldn't have broken. It's because Hudson's problem with his spine. I had more amniotic fluid than I would have in a normal pregnancy. So two of our pastors came and prayed with us, and they saw a vision of Jesus holding a lamb, and they just said, we just really feel like God is taking care of you. And so they gave me a choice. They're like, you can stay here at the local hospital and, we'll take care of you. But if you want, you can transfer to Boston. And they just said, we just felt like we were always choosing life every single moment. We're like, well, if Hudson's born now, he's premature. So we need to go to a place that they can take care of a premature baby.
Mm-hmm.
You're always just, praying for his healing. So anyway, and what's amazing about this whole thing is that, so Friday is Hudson's 25th birthday in heaven. I think it's so
Wow.
cool that we're doing
Wow.
this show right now. Because right now, 25 years ago, I was in labor in the hospital. So
Wow.
it was
Wow.
a very long labor. I was in the hospital for 3.5 days. People
Oh
were
my
like,
goodness.
why is this baby not coming? It,
Mm.
I go into a lot more in depth in the
Mm.
book, but anyway, I'm just trying to give you the cliff notes.
Yeah, yeah.
But basically, during the time when Hudson was, when I was carrying him in my womb, my husband had a vision of that he just felt the birth was going to be glorious. So we just kept praying into that, and I knew that wherever I was at, as long as God's presence was there, I was going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I was getting really weary. It just things had not gone well, and the labor wasn't progressing. Matter of fact, the nurse that was taking care of me was actually named Karen, and so she actually had gone home and then come back to do another shift. And she's like, "You're still here?" But
Wow.
basically what happened, this was on December 3rd. It was early in the morning, and I just got really just nauseous. I just was not feeling good at all, and I almost felt like I was going to throw up. I just didn't feel well. So then what happened is all of a sudden I stopped breathing. And so then what happened from my husband's perspective is I stopped breathing. They tried to revive me. I wouldn't revive. So they had to call in a resuscitation team, and then they made him leave the room. So
Okay,
that's
so let me stop you for a second there. So I understand the pregnancy part of it, and especially what you're saying with your son having a spina bifida and things like that. But how was that? And I know you said the doctor said you were high risk, but what about that pregnancy was a risk to your health that would have caused that?
I think I don't know exactly what happened, and they didn't know for a long time too, because we just think that part of it was all of the long labor. But what
Okay.
ended up happening was the amniotic fluid got in my blood and caused an amniotic embolism, which is usually only diagnosed by autopsy.
Oh
But
wow.
happened was, instead of the blood clotting in my organs, because normally what happens when you have an embolism, it like clots in your lungs, it clots in your heart, and you instantly die.
Mm.
My blood all clotted in my skin. So I had
Mm.
a cut on my throat. I had bruises all over my back and my arms because the blood clotted in my skin. And
Wow.
the reason that they knew that is because after I gave birth to Hudson, that I just started bleeding. I was just bleeding to death. But since I was at New England Medical Center, they were able to diagnose it quickly. And so they gave me, they had to give me all my platelets. They were all gone because I
Wow.
antibiotic. And so then what happened was when so from my perspective, let me tell that real quick.
Mm-hmm.
So when I stopped breathing, then I was in brilliant light. So I just felt enfolded by light, and it was in that light that I sensed that Hudson was born. So it was almost like I got to be with him just for a second when he was whole, even though I didn't see him. Like I felt that presence that we were
Wow.
there together, and then I was kind of like Paul talks about, he doesn't know whether he's in the body, out of the body. I was in kind of in that state for about 8 hours, but then when I came back out of that state, then I just really realized that God had given me a gift. He had given me a gift of experiencing, I call it his righteousness or his covering, his protection
Mm-hmm.
during that time. Because I don't really think I died. I don't think my heart ever stopped, even though I stopped breathing. They had to breathe for me for about 8 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I just realized that God was giving me a key to how I should live now, which is focus on the light and not the darkness. But
Wow.
anyway, so when I left the hospital,
What? I'm 1 second.
okay, no problem.
This is a lot. Wow. So okay, so the experience that you had where you say you felt like you were in light, you like I understand what you're saying by like you felt it, but you don't remember anything outside of that. Like you don't remember seeing anything or anything yet. It was just more of like a feeling.
No, I mean, I feel like I was in the middle of light, like in a brilliant light. I was
Mm-hmm.
just, it's like a purity that like I can't even describe. It was just
Right.
like I felt like it was like the righteousness of Christ covering me.
And then, but that it wasn't like you. I know you say you felt like he was born in there, which is like, oh my goodness. Like when you said that, my stomach just Um, but you didn't see him or anything. You didn't see any. You didn't see God. You didn't see angels. You didn't see anything like that. You just it was just like a feeling.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
in my one of my other books, I talk about it a bit more because I really, after a while, I started kind of like asking God about the whole experience. But
Okay.
I feel like God just really like gave me that gift of experiencing His holiness, His purity, His covering, and then that's where I just knew Hudson was with me.
Mm.
And then my friend in Georgia, she was we were kind of talking about, you know, does God give visions and prophetic words and all that, and she didn't even know I was in labor because remember I went in labor very early. And
Mm.
God gave her a vision of angels coming and taking Hudson up to heaven, and then she got the words battle wearied and bruised but not defeated.
Mm.
Even know that I had all the bruising and all the cuts and all that. It was that's what the Lord had given her. But anyway, so then when I left the hospital, they told me,
Wait, I'm sorry. 1 second. So I want to point out a few things that are coming to my mind as you're talking about this. And number one is that a lot of the times we get this idea that, a lot of people say, well, God might not be real or he's not real because look at all the bad things that are happening. We have this idea that if God loves us, he would make things happen the way that's less problematic for us, so we don't have to go through this hard stuff. And so one thing that stands out to me about what you're saying, even when it comes to, like you said, the blood clots, like you were talking about going to a hospital where you thought your son would get the best care once he came into the world, but that also turned out to be a blessing because when you had the situation with you, being there helped you to kind of survive that, if I'm using the right word too. Yeah.
mm-hmm,
And so, and also with there was another example that I was thinking of, but it's kind of slipped my mind right now. But it's like we see these things as problems, like why is this happening? But even in the midst of those things, God is being merciful, and he's pulling strings, and he's organizing stuff. He's giving you thoughts in your mind that will take you away from that worst possible outcome, because according to you, you could have died.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
it's like, yeah, you, so let me move this around and move this around, move it. And so too often we just want him to part the Red Sea and just move everything out of our way. But he doesn't really work like that a lot of the time. He still uses everything that's around us, whether it's a doctor's visit, a doctor you're talking to, a nurse in the room, the hospital you go to. He still uses all of those things to orchestrate an outcome that you can grow from, that you can still understand who he is from, that you can get peace from. And it might not necessarily be always the outcome that you want, but he's always working in the midst of those things. And so that was something that I was really picking up a lot, because it's very easy for somebody to look at your story and look back and say, oh my goodness, that's really terrible. How could you believe God? How could you trust God? But when you look at things from a spiritual perspective, and the Bible talks about people that are the physical, or I'm sorry, the flesh doesn't understand the spirit, like they're in conflict with each other. But when you learn to look at things in the spirit, you can see God working even in the midst of those things, even in the midst of the most terrible things. And when you do, it gives you hope, it gives you peace. Like even what you're saying, it gives you peace. I mean, that experience that you had, I mean, you, even though your son didn't make it, you got to you feel his spirit. Like that's a blessing. That's really a blessing. And so I just wanted to point that out. I feel a little bit like I want to cry here a little bit, but I'm not. But so that was one thing that I wanted to point it out. And that a lot of times we just kind of take a lot of these things for granted, for what God is doing and things like that. And it takes these type of things to help us appreciate, like you say, life and experience God and things like that. So God doesn't get any kick out of hurting us or watching us struggle and stuff like that. But he does know that through that we become more receptive to him, and we become more focused on what's important in life, and those things are invaluable.
Yep.
So yeah, those are a couple things that was on my mind as you're talking. And so I'm curious, so when you woke up, because you have this experience that you felt your son, and the spirit is very powerful. And I think a lot of people take that for granted, because you can, I know you've had dreams where, with, I don't know how to explain it, but so when you're in God's presence, you can just know stuff. It's not like somebody has to sit down and talk to you and teach it to you, and you have to go through the whole process. But when you're in God's presence, knowledge just drops. And so I can just imagine you being in this middle of light, and you just have all this knowledge around you, that you like, of who he is and what he's doing. And then your son is there, like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So um so you felt like you were there when he was born, and you had him, but then you woke up and he wasn't there. So can you talk a little bit about that, waking up from that and realizing that he had passed, or how did you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the big thing, I didn't know what happened to me, and I just looked in both of my arms. I had IVs in both arms, but I just looked at my husband and I said, Hudson's not here. It's time to give his body
Okay.
away. And so,
Okay.
yeah, I just had a super big peace in my mind. And I think for me too, a big struggle in my life was always feeling like I never measured up to God, that
Okay.
I always felt like I needed to do more. And so just that was a double gift to me, because I
Mm.
felt like God's acceptance of me, because
Oh
it's the
wow.
righteousness of Christ that covers us and makes us acceptable to God. It's not anything that we do. So
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
just like an added gift to me in that.
Yeah. Wow. And that's what I was thinking when I said things don't turn out, that they're bad, but then they turn out in a way that's beneficial, which is you not having a blood clot in the wrong place. Like, yeah, you have them on your skin, but people usually have them, in the places that you said. So that was the other thing I wanted to point out. So you woke up and you had a piece about, you knew he wasn't there. So it wasn't like, oh, I thought he was born and now he's not here. You had a piece about it and you were able to move on. Wow. Oh my goodness.
Then
Yeah.
they told me when I left the hospital, they're like, you have AIDS and you have hepatitis. I mean, they didn't know that, but they said, we gave you
You are out of
all
blood.
your platelets. And they're like, most likely you have all these conditions. And I couldn't walk. So I was just, my whole body was just broken. And it was really hard for me because I
Oh
felt like not
God.
only did I lose Hudson, but I thought I lost the ability to ever have any other children. So
Mm.
I just was, very, my whole body was just a wreck. But now
Wow.
back,
Wow. Wow.
so I took me 2 years to recover physically, but I just feel like that was such a good time for me because I was able to really be honest with my struggle and really take those questions to God and just really process it. And I really talk about in my book how you don't recover from loss, but you're enlarged by it. And
Mm.
losses are like stumps, and they won't go away, but you can choose what you want to plant around that stump
Mm.
and how
Mm.
you let that. And what I feel like it did to me is it really showed me that I really, really wanted to be a mom, that I
Mm.
really wanted to have kids, but then it was just such a big deal because I didn't know. No one could ever tell me, like, would I be able to get pregnant again? If so, could I have a healthy baby? Would I be able to deliver the baby? So there was just all of those questions. So I felt like at that point, I was like, I felt like I was going to die if I had a baby, and I felt like I was going to die if I didn't.
Right.
So
Right.
I just really had to ask God, to help me to really fight for that dream. And
Mm. Mm.
so then,
Wow. So let me ask you really quickly. So for the losing your, because I know this is, and this is one of the reasons why I like to do outside the box, because I think a lot of the times people, especially Christians, give you very cookie cutter answers about just trust God and everything's going to be okay. And then when you having all these bump in the road and you're falling apart, and then you feel like, well, maybe I'm doing something wrong because God is not helping me. And I see other Christians skipping down the street with flowers, and why is stuff so difficult for me? So can you talk a little bit about, like, because I know there's some people who might be watching and saying, you were praying before the baby was even born and asking God to save the baby and heal the baby and all that type of stuff. So how did you come to terms with the fact that all of the stuff that you were doing in preparation for the birth and hoping that things would get better? I mean, I know you probably were hoping, even if you didn't want to hope. It's probably like, okay, do I hope he's going to make it, or do I just let it go? And then you're wrestling with that. So how did you, I guess you can say, make peace with God, so to speak, that you did all of that and he still passed away?
yeah, I think that it was a lot of just really time and asking God to meet me and to speak to me. We had gone down to Florida. I always feel like God takes me there when I just have like my spiritual breakthroughs.
Mm-hmm.
And I just needed a break, and just I was continuing just to rest and get my body. This was like a year after I had Hudson. And
Mm-hmm.
so we were, um,
So,
bless you.
no,
Um,
sorry, that's good.
we were listening to a Christian radio station, and I heard this guy's testimony, and it just really jumped out at me. He was talking about how he and his family were in a terrible airplane accident, and
Mm.
he was the only survivor of his family.
Oh, wow.
So I just was riveted to his testimony. And he said he had people come up to him and say, "Wow, God must have really wanted to get your attention, to let that horrible thing happen to you." And I couldn't
Wow.
believe it. And he talked about how hurtful that comment was. He's like, "I was close to God. I was praying to God." He's like, it wasn't God. I already had my focus on God, but it would just really minister to me because I think God used that to really help me to see that, suffering and loss is a part of our lives. Jesus
Mm.
said, "In this world you will have trouble, but take heart,
Mm.
I have overcome the world."
Mm.
You look at the book of Second Corinthians, Paul is so honest about his suffering. He doesn't white sugarcoat it. He's like,
Mm.
I was shipwrecked. I went sleepless nights. But the one thing that he did say, I specifically go into this in my book in Second Corinthians chapter 1, how he talked about that God delivered him in the past. God was going to deliver him in the present. And he would deliver him in the future. And I think sometimes
Mm.
he delivers us in ways that maybe we weren't expecting, but that he is Emmanuel. He is with us.
Mm.
So I think that um, I talk about it a bit in my book, like how God just really met me in a personal way. And just,
Mm,
there are some questions, though, on this side of heaven we'll never understand.
mm,
Like why
mm,
those are unanswered. And I heard this great talk where this guy was saying that what he does with all those unanswered questions is he puts them in a cloud. It's like, God, why didn't you heal Hudson when we prayed for him over and over and over? So what we do is we need to take those questions and put them in a cloud. But the key is where does that cloud land? It
mm.
can't land between God and us. We have to put that cloud on the side of us and say, when I get to heaven, I'm going to ask all these unanswered questions, and then go back to that childlike faith. Like, God, I know you're good. I know you're my father. And I know I have this mystery. Like, why didn't this work out? But I'm going to
Mm.
put that mystery over to the side, and I'm going to go back to just trusting what you say in your word and being my good father.
Yeah. And I like what you said about like not understanding, because a lot of the time that's really where we struggle because we don't understand. God understands everything, why it happens, when it's going to happen, how long is, and we don't have all the information. And though, and a lot of times in our suffering, that's why we end up with the answers to our questions, sometimes being that God doesn't care, he doesn't love us, because we're looking for those answers to the questions that we don't have, and God has them. And I say sometimes that some of the reason why he doesn't tell us all the time is because we wouldn't be able to comprehend it if he tried to tell us. Like, his mind is massive. If you think about the fact that he made the universe, the earth, the sun, the human body, nature, and everything, and he has all the information, even if he tried to explain it to you and how it's connected to the universe, you wouldn't understand anyway. So he's saying, you know what? And it's like talking to a baby. You know what? I can explain all of this to you right now. If I do, you're not going to understand it anyway. So just trust me. Trust that I have you. Trust that I'm there. I can give you the answers another time, or maybe when we see face to face. But just don't make the answer become that something is wrong with me now,
Mhm.
because you don't have the answer that you need at the time. And so I think that's very, very key, because it's very easy, especially when we're in suffering. The enemy is very, very busy trying to make us believe something bad about God because of our suffering. And so if you can just keep that your mind on God and understand, okay, this is who he is. It's like he's here, I'm here. And there's a lot of questions and stuff in the middle that I don't know. And sometimes, like you said, you just have to accept that I don't know. I just don't know. But
Yeah.
if God loves me the way he says he does, I'm going to hold on to that. And hopefully, when I see him in heaven, he will answer all of my questions. I would be really excited about that person, because I'm a very big question person. So I will have a lot of questions like, hey, why is this? Why is this? Why is that? But And so another thing that I like what you were saying about, even with Paul being very honest about his suffering, the I would say even above Paul, you have David. And
Mhm.
and so a lot of people, again, because they get this image from other Christians that, oh, if you have faith, you just everything will be fine, like what you're saying, even with the guy. Oh, God must have did that because that's what Job's friend said to him. Oh, God must have did that to you because you were bad or something like that. But if you and then you get the impression that when you're struggling, when you're hurting, and when you're questioning God, and when you're upset, that you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
That's actually part of the process, but you just have to come back to God. Like David was all over the place. David's like, crying and begging. Like some of the things that he was saying to God, you would think that, like, why is he even praying to him? Like, he's like, God, please hear me. Don't abandon me. It's like, wow. Like, but he didn't stop. Like, he kept praying. He kept asking. He kept believing. He would not give up on this idea that he had, that God was good and he loves him and he was going to help him no matter what was happening. And so I think that's important for us to realize, even in the midst of our suffering, that it's okay to cry. It's okay to be mad. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to hurt. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to, have to lean on somebody for a little bit. God understands that that's part of the process. Just don't let it change your perception of him, and always come back to him and understanding who he is in the midst of that. So I just wanted to point that out.
Definitely. And I just feel
Yeah.
like that is so good, like especially when you're going through suffering, just to live in the book of Psalms. because
Yeah.
there are some words in there that I would feel uncomfortable saying to God, but it's right there in the Bible. So, just find,
Yeah,
if you're angry or if you need to, God wants us to be honest. He wants us to
exactly.
raw with him and just say, I heard this song this week. It was talking about how, God, thank you for keeping me when I can't keep myself.
Mm,
1 minute
mm,
I'm angry with you, and the next minute I'm begging for your help.
exactly.
The whole idea of just really being honest with God, because He can handle our honesty.
Yes, he can. Yes, he can. And he's always ready to, steer us in the way that we need, where we need to end up. He's always ready to help us get there. And as long as you keep your heart and mind open to him, even in the midst of all that, he will get you there. You just have to. But when you start closing your heart, oh, God doesn't care, or he doesn't like me, or he doesn't love me, or whatever, that's when you actually close the door to him, helping you through the whole process. So, absolutely. Oh, my heart. So now let's fast forward a little bit, if you don't mind, because
No,
we talked about one miscarriage, but in the book you say you had three. And in my mind, I'm like, if this is what the first one was like, oh my goodness, how in the world did you endure? I mean, of course, I know it's by the grace of God, but you went through this a second time and then a third time. It's like, oh my goodness. So, can you talk about that a little bit?
yeah. So I really feel like the main attack with Hudson, because, well, first of all, I always like to say that all six of my kids have given me a gift, and my three
Mm,
on earth are still giving me gifts.
mm,
But I feel like my three heavenly babies all gave me a legacy to
mm,
something that I could just be richer for their lives for, even though they were in utero. Um,
mm,
Hudson helped me really just become awakened to the importance of prayer and family and just really wanting to be a mother. And then Jesse, who I had Sarah and Hannah, um, two girls after I had Hudson,
and you
and
miscarried. You missed. These were back to back, so it wasn't like.
so I had Hudson, and then 2 years later, I had Sarah. And a really cool story, real quick, about Sarah, because it was very scary for me to get pregnant again.
And this
But
is the second pregnancy.
second, yeah.
Okay.
And but then just there was a lot of people praying for us, and my husband had a dream, and he dreamed he saw a little girl run up to him in a red dress and say, "I love you, Sarah," in the dream.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyways, God just was very good to me and really helped me through that pregnancy. And Sarah was a healthy, beautiful baby girl. And then I had Hannah 18 months later. And then I just loved being a mom so much that I was like, I know it just sounds crazy to even want another baby. I should just be happy, but I just love children so much.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when we decided to get pregnant, and then I lost Jesse at 12 weeks.
Okay.
And
Wow.
I feel like that not only did I lose that baby, but then my husband lost his job. We had to move. That was a whole time of just great loss in my life.
Wow.
I feel like that was a real attack against my soul, even though my body recovered fairly well from that.
Mm.
And I go in more in depth in my book. But anyways,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's when he brought us to Wheaton. I had about a year after we moved here, I had a son. I had Jonathan, and that was a wonderful pregnancy and a good birth, and everything went great. And then
Okay.
I felt full. I was like, okay, we're all done. I've
Mm.
got 5 babies now, and um, we weren't really planning on having any more. And so when I got pregnant with the sixth baby, I wasn't expecting it, and
Mm-hmm.
actually, I only carried that baby for 8 weeks. It was
Okay.
and I wasn't really affected at all, much physically, but that was actually my hardest loss.
Oh wow. Really?
Just because I feel like Hudson was attack on my body, Jesse was a really attack on my heart, my soul. But I feel like Aaron, when I lost Aaron, that was attack against my spirit. Because I was like, how could you let me begin on loss and end on loss? It
Um.
just really, I mean, I got to the point where I couldn't even cry. I just like would groan, like it, and I would be holding. Jonathan was 4 at the time, and I was
Mm-hmm.
holding him, and I think part of it was it really touched a tender part in my heart. All the stuff
Exactly.
I've gone through. So Jonathan told me, "Mom, why are you raining on me?" Because I was crying when I was holding him. But, the gift that God gave me in that was he's like, "You're not ending on loss, you're ending on heaven." And I feel like, when you read my book, you'll understand the whole how God really helped me focus on to be present or presence oriented, that, we can go through, I compare it to a Chicago winter where it's like super cold outside and the weather is very harsh, but then you get those brilliant blue skies. I don't know if you remember them, but so God just told me you really have to focus. What are you going to focus on? And so actually, what I did, God gave me some illustrations that I actually wear as jewelry. So on my hand, I have one hand that has no rings on it, and then the other hand, I have my wedding ring and another ring, because one hand is in heaven and one hand is on earth, and both are full. And then this is my broken heart necklace that my friend made me, and I don't know if you can see it, but there's 3 holes in it, and each one of those holes is for my one of my children in heaven. And I feel like when you lose a baby, it's very difficult because when you lose a loved one, you have things to grieve. Like you're grieving who they were and what you knew about them and maybe memories you had together. But when you have to grieve the loss of a baby, you have to learn to grieve the future. And I think that's a skill that is needed. And so God just gave me some wisdom and how to grieve the future, and then how He like met me in each one of those the lives of my babies that were here on Earth for just a little brief time. But so, anyways, it's been a journey, and it's been something where He has continued to just give me gifts and meet me where I'm at.
Wow, wow. So with what you're saying about you just said something really key, and it my man started going this and trying to think about it, and now anyway, so you were just saying that God helped you. You had to grieve. I thought that was very, very like wow, eye opening for you to say that. I haven't dealt with death very much in my life, honestly. And so, I mean, I have had people die, but it's all my brothers and sisters are still alive. My parents are still alive. Most of the people that I know that have passed, I have probably hadn't seen them in a while. I haven't been around anybody that I was just like, I was just with you yesterday, or I was with you every day, and now all of a sudden you're not here. But I have seen, grief up close and personal, like kind of with some other people. And I know that the struggle is like realizing that the person is not with you anymore, and you can't see them anymore, you can't talk to them anymore, and you're used to them being there. But what you're saying about a miscarriage is really eye-opening because you don't have those memories. I mean, the baby is just at that moment until they're born, they're just a part of your kind of like your imagination of what they could be and what they, and stuff like that. So can you go into that a little bit more, because I thought that was really, really insightful for you to say to grieve the future. So can you explain that?
Sure. Yeah. Just like, when it came to Hudson's birthday, his first birthday in heaven, but he wasn't on earth. So I had
Mm-hmm.
to, there were like dreams that I wished he was there. Or like,
Mm,
when I was with my other kids, like we were on vacation and, we would just be like, wow, I wish we were all here together. So like it
mm,
was like a future that could have been, but isn't. But
mm,
amazing to me. I mean, my kids talk about their heavenly brothers and sisters, and it's just neat for me to hear them speak about that. And
mm.
we're in a small group, and I didn't tell many people about my testimony for a while. It wasn't something I just walk up to someone and say, "Oh, do you want me to tell you about this traumatic time that I went through?"
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyways, we were in a small group and we were all praying. And this guy's like, I don't know why, but I see a vision of a baby in heaven. It's swinging on a swing. And so then it just really ministered in my heart that like God was reminding me of my kids in heaven. And then later, his wife had a vision, and she actually had lost a baby. And the vision was our kids were playing together in heaven. Isn't that cool? But anyways, so I didn't mean to get on a tangent there, but the whole
No,
idea
it's fine.
is that so what I've done is like every time, like especially with Hudson's birthday, I always try to do something to bless somebody else
Okay.
in their honor. So like I'll take like dinner, or I'll do something, and for it's going to be 25 years this week, but for most of the
Mm-hmm.
years I wrote it down. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
know, like in Hudson, in honor, in memory of Hudson, I'm going to do this like gift of love to somebody, or do something kind of. So to the whole idea of just like remembering their birthdays, and then, you know, just really, you know, acknowledging that if they were on Earth, this is how things would be different. That's what I mean
Mm-hmm.
by like grieving the future.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Wow, God is awesome. I mean, the things that we can go through and recover from, because it's only by the grace of God. I mean, even the first one, which sounds like it was the most kind of overall traumatic experience, especially when it comes to your body, and you practically almost carried the baby to full term. Those type of things, and then to have two more losses behind that, I think for a normal person that doesn't have a higher hope, so to speak, it's
Mhm.
going to be very, very difficult to overcome those type of losses. And so it just, to me, even that as you're talking about them and things like that, it just lets me understand the depth of God's power and love, that he helps us get over those things that will be very, very difficult for us to get over on our own. And I do like that you're saying, like, you don't get over it, like it's not something that ever goes away, but he just helps you look at it from his perspective. Maybe is if I'm saying the right thing, he just gives you a perspective on it that helps you be okay until you can see your kids, until you can go to heaven and see your kids. Like, wow, this is wow. So, I mean, I'm just like, I don't know. So, so how does your, and again, we talked a little bit before this, and I apologize for not being able to read as much as your book as I would like. I really like to try to read the books because I'm a writer to myself. I've just been super, super busy, and I couldn't kind of squeeze it in. So after you talk about the three losses that you went through, and I like how you talked about one was like the attack on your body, and then your soul and spirit. I think that's really interesting. If you want to kind of explain that a little bit more, I would love to hear it. But how does the book end? Like, because I know you said, oh, I started with loss and I end with loss. So how did you wrap up the ending of the book?
So then what I did is I just talked about just how each one of my heavenly babies really made me treasure every moment I have with my earthly kids, and just how
Mm,
we, you know, I think it's really, I mean,
yeah.
I'm a different mother than I would have been if I never had Hudson. I think that God used that to really show me that I wanted to be a mother, and
Mm,
also just to really treasure my kids. And so I just worked really, really hard to make every moment the best it could be. I mean,
yeah.
obviously, you know, you have problems and things you have to go through, but I think I just enjoyed my kids so much. Like I just held them as much as I could and just
Mm-hmm.
loved them. And I think, I mean, every mom does, but
Yeah.
I think I was more intentional about just like, okay, let's make this the best it can be. And then, but then so then I talk about the legacy that each one of my children, like my ones on earth, are giving me, and then the ones in heaven. And then they end the book with talking about the armor of God, because we're in a spiritual battle. And,
Mm,
you know, these, like you said, these losses can just take us out. Suffering
mm,
can take us out.
mm,
So what I did is I talk about how the armor of God, is a gift that's given to us instantly. For instance,
mm,
like the belt of truth, we have the whole Bible. It's right there, but it's also a gift that we can grow in. It's kind of like you get a brand new car, and you know you can put the key in the ignition, but and you can drive it away, but you may not know all its features and all the things that
mm,
you have
mm,
to go in learning that. And so
mm,
I talk about how each gift piece of the armor of God is a gift given to us instantly, but also a gift we can grow in, and then
mm,
a tool to help us through loss.
mm,
Since like with the truth, you know, just lies can be like that soil of suffering is a place where those lies grow so easily. So we
mm,
be intentional to say, well, what is the truth, and to, really seek that out. So, and I really feel like, especially with some losses, you can't do it by yourself. I mean, I got so many like prayer times and just really had to seek God. And, God did meet me, but it was a journey and something I had to really to seek. And that's why I'd love to be able to help somebody, if you haven't been able to recover from your loss or your grief, like to help you find that light in your darkness. I think it's really important that we can help each other to do that. So then the book ends going through each piece of the armor, showing how it's a gift to give in, gift to grow in, and a gift to take you through loss. And then I also have for each one of my heavenly babies, I actually wrote a just like a story of their life. Now, Aaron was the hardest because I only carried that baby for 8 weeks, but I still wrote a book for to remember that baby's life. And so that for me, just like talking about the time when I did carry them in utero was really important because that was their life. And so I wrote like a book for them that was kind of like their baby book. So I have those books all in my book.
Now I'm even more excited to read it now. And what it brings to mind, I don't know if you know that story. I think it's called something about heaven. The story about the little boy who died. He went to heaven, and as he was getting older, he kept telling his parents that he saw God and Jesus and stuff like that. But one thing that he told them is that a baby that his mom had lost before he was born, he said he saw his sister or something like that. And so it just really, that was the first time that the idea even came into my head that, kids, little kids, even babies in the womb that don't make it, go to heaven and they basically grow up there. It's like they grow up in heaven, and the idea that they're waiting for you when you get there, I mean, it just gives you so much hope. I know, again, people lose their loved one, and people that they're with every day, they have hope to see them too. But like you said, to see this baby that you didn't get a chance to meet, but you have so much love for, and stuff like that. So it's just a very, very beautiful thing to know that you can see them again one day, and that their God has them safe up there in heaven. So yeah, it's
And I
nice.
think that's why I always felt it was important to name them. I think
Mm,
that, no matter what point in the pregnancy that you lose the baby, to give the baby, ask God to give the baby a name.
mm.
So each one of my heavenly babies, I prayed about the name, and it has significance for me. And I love to call them by their names.
Wow. That's really nice. So now you talking about being able to kind of connect with people when you're going through loss and things like that. And we were talking a little bit before. You have something on your website. Can you talk a little bit about people who might need to reach out to you? Because I know that there's a lot of women that are going through this, and so I want them to be able to connect with you. There's some things that I'm really good at being able to talk to people about. This is not one of them. And so I want anybody who is in need of some help getting through their own grief or their losses and miscarriages, or even if their children passed away after they were born and things like that, to be able to reach you. So can you talk about your website for that one?
Yes. So on my actual initial website, I just have a homeschool questions to ask if you want to homeschool. But Sage has a particular link that she'll put in the comments, and it takes you to a page called Freedom to Grieve. And on that page, there's a Learn More button, and you just press on that. You can put your name and your email in there, and then that takes you to a place you can download a special letter from me, and then just I talk a little bit more about why the illustration of stumps and how that really helps me deal with grief. I have a special page I wrote for you.
Hmm. And so, yeah, you are a life coach. And so, what type of coaching do you offer? Because I'm sure you talk to women about this, but do you do other type of life coaching as well?
Yes, I do writing and business coaching.
Oh, yeah, you
That's
mentioned
kind of
that. Okay.
where I have my clients right now. But I also have grief packages where I can help someone like really walk through maybe the unresolved grief, or it just really helped them to think about that loss and find the light in the darkness.
Yeah, how to reframe it.
Just helping them a way to preserve that period of time. Like they can either use an example, like I can help them with writing their baby story that they can always have, or just ways that they can process that loss and um, find help in the midst of walking through that grief.
Yeah. Wow. So something that you said before that really stood out to me, and I know we're going to wrap up here in a second, is that you were saying about the lies that we can believe sometimes they can be really damaging. And something I just want to highlight is that if it's a lie, that's usually where the pain is coming from. It's almost like
Mm-hmm.
lies are like viruses or something. I'm trying to think of a quick analogy. And so as long as it's there, it's causing damage. It's causing damage to your mind, it's causing damage to your spirit. So the lie has to be replaced with the truth. And the truth is always healing. It always takes you in a positive direction. And so even for some people who get stuck, and I know I have, I talked before about my issues with depression, and one of them is that you just kind of get stuck in this cycle of negative thinking. And the negative thinking is actually what's causing the bad feelings to continue. But when you replace those things with the truth, it just brings in a ray of light. It helps you see things in a different perspective, and you understand that the stuff is not as dark as it looks. And so for anybody who's watching, who's hurting, who's struggling, who's going through anything, and you feel like you have so much pain because maybe you think God is not listening to you, or he doesn't care, or this didn't happen. You have to turn your mind away from the lie, because the lie is actually what's causing the pain. You have to understand that God loves you. He's there. He can help you, and it's okay for you to be hurt. And so the truth will heal you in that capacity. Did you have anything you might want to add to that? Because I really like that you pointed that out.
Yeah, I think that, we a lot of times we talk a lot about, the negative, but whenever you take away like a lie, you always have to say, God, what's the truth? Because
Exactly.
it's like taking away a weed, but then planting a seed and
Yeah.
nurturing that truth.
Mm.
But no, I think that's really important because you're right. So much of pain comes from lies.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the last thing that I wanted to say really quickly, because you said you were talking about all mothers love their babies, and that's not true. All mothers don't love their baby. I mean, it's really unfortunate, and I wish we could say that all mothers really love and cherish their children, but that's not the truth, unfortunately. But it's when you see the opposite of what it could be is when you learn to appreciate God even more, even your mothers, even because you understand that your mother didn't have to do all the things, that she could have just been one of those mothers that didn't want you. Or like you said with your kids, you cherish your kids more because you know what it was like to lose your kids. And so loss is bad and it's hard and it's heavy, but it's so much, it's enriching. And I know it's a weird thing to say, but it enriches your perspective of life, because once you understand what could have been, or what loss feels like, you appreciate what you have that much more. And so that's really, really a lot of the times I think a lot of people, even Christians, miss, because we don't understand that we have so many blessings even in the midst of the stuff that is going wrong. And we have to learn how to see those things and be grateful, because it could be worse. It could always be worse. So did you have anything that you wanted to say about that, or anything that you wanted to say last for anybody who's watching, or any woman who might be going through what you went through?
Yeah. I just think that hope is so important. And when we lose our hope, that is so hard. So just if you are in that place where you feel hopeless, to know that there is a path to hope, and
Mm, mm,
to make sure you reach out. I mean, I'd love to talk to you, or know, or Sage, or whoever, but don't stay there. Just
mm.
there is light in the darkness. And one of the quotes I heard, we want to say, oh, I just want to run to the sunset. I just want things to be, the way they were before all this happened. But really, the only way we can find healing is to run into the darkness, where we'll find the sunrise.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, wow. Okay, so thank you so much for sharing your story. I really appreciate it. I know it's going to be a blessing to any women that are watching or anybody who's went through this. And I guess that's it. So thank you so much for your time, you guys. I have her website below under the screen right now, scrolling past. I will put the links to also her book and the her website as well in the comments below. And please reach out if you have any questions or comments about what she's doing. You can contact me if you want, and I can send a message to her and let you know. But please reach out if you're suffering or hurting or going through this. Like Karen said, you don't have to go through it alone. That there is help and there is comfort. And if you're having trouble seeing, finding God on your own, that's why He has people here on this earth to kind of help you do that. So, but that's it for today. Thanks for tuning in. And I'll see you guys next Saturday again at 12 p.m.
Thank you so much.
Oh, no problem. You have a good night, everybody. Bye.